Hello there and welcome on in. I hope this week is treating you well. Like always, this week we have something really fun to show you. And this time, this deck is not just for casual play. But anyways, I'm 16-Bit Ferret and welcome to Building on a Budget. The deck this week will be for the Pauper format. If you never heard of this format, you are allowed to make a deck using nothing but the common rarity cards. So if a card was printed once as a common, and then if it ever got upshifted as an uncommon or rare in a different set, or vice versa, it is still legal for the Pauper format. Now that we have that out of the way, this week's deck is known as Bogles. The mechanic of this deck revolves around hexproof creatures. This ability is really nice because we can have spells target our own creatures while our opponent are not able to target our creatures, making the only way for them to get rid of our creatures is through combat or through our opponents making us sack things or through the usual board wipe. Like always, the prices we pull for this deck are based off TCG player market price. So these are also going to be the near mint condition. If you want to make this cheaper for yourself, then feel free to pick up some light played copies. It'll still be playable in events. It'll be giving some cards a good home. With that said, let's go check out this deck. Like always, starting off with creatures. First creature on this deck list is going to be Grove Cover Scout. This 1/1 elf scout has a casting cost of a single green mana and has the ability Hexproof. This deck will be running a full play set of it, and that'll set us back about 75 cents. Next up, we have the creature this deck is named after, Pauper Bogles. This 1/1 beast has a casting cost of either a blue or a green mana, and has the ability Hexproof. We'll be running a full set of this for the deck, and that'll set us back about $5. Last creature for this deck will be Silhana Ledgewalker. This 1/1 elf rogue has a casting cost of 1 and a single green. This creature has hexproof, and it can't be blocked except by creatures with flying, making this creature great for avoiding things our opponents have that can only swing on the ground. We'll be running a full play set of this for the deck, and it will cost us about $2.25. Now that all the creatures are out of the way, let's go tally up what it's going to cost. It's going to be about $8. Now on to enchantments, and oh boy, this deck runs a lot of them. First up, we have Ethereal Armor. This enchantment aura has a casting cost of a single white mana. It also lets us give enchanted creature +1/+1 for each enchantment we control, and also gives it first strike. Not only will this card make this creature a problem the more we keep on playing enchantments, but also first strike on top of that too, and all that for a single mana. This card is just too good not to run. We'll be running a full play set of this card for the deck, and it will set us back about $1.50. Next enchantment in this deck is going to be Rancor. This enchantment aura has a casting cost of a single green, and lets us have enchanted creature gets +2/+0 and has trample. And when Rancor is put in the graveyard from play, return Rancor to its owner's hand. So not only does this card buff up our creature and give us extra damage to punch on through, but it also makes it to where if our opponent gets rid of said creature, Rancor, instead of going from the graveyard, returns back to our hand, so we can cast it again. We'll be running a full play set of this for this deck, and it'll set us back about $4.50. Next enchantment is Spider Umbra. This enchantment aura gives enchanted creature +1/+1 along with reach. On top of that, it gives enchanted creature Totem Armor. Now, Totem Armor is a very unique buff because what happens is whenever enchanted creature gets destroyed, we would instead remove Spider Umbra instead. That's what Totem Armor does. It's really nice and it's really amazing because it gives ourselves a way to protect a creature if an opponent happens to find a way around hexproof. We'll be running a full play set for this deck, and it'll be costing about $1. What's better than having something that has Totem Armor? How about 2 things that have totem armor. So next up is going to be Hyena Umbra. This enchantment aura has a casting cost of a single white mana, and it gives enchanted creature +1/+1 along with first strike, and this also has totem armor. So that's going to be another thing that can help protect our creatures. Very nice. We'll be running a full play set of this in the deck, and it'll cost about $1.75. Finally, onto an enchantment that doesn't cost a single mana, we have Armadillo Cloak. This enchantment aura has a casting cost of 1, a green, and a white. This enchantment gives enchanted creature +2/+2, and also gives them trample. On top of that, it gives them whenever enchanted creature deals damage, you gain that much life. I want to point out first off the wording on this card. It does not say the keyword lifelink. So what does this mean, you may ask? It means if you have 2 of this enchantment on one creature, the lifelink trigger or life gain trigger will stack on top of each other. We'll be running a full play set of this for this deck, and it will cost around $2. And last but definitely not least, onto the enchantments in this deck, we're going to be looking at Ancestral Mask. This enchantment aura has a casting cost of 2 and a green, and it also lets us have enchanted creature getting +2/+2 for each other enchantment in play. I just want to say this right here. This is just basically a more ramped up version of Ethereal Armor minus the first strike. Along with that, this deck's going to be running 24 enchantments. So this card is definitely going to make things big in a hurry. We'll be running a full play set of this in this deck, and it'll cost about $10. So after we tally up all the enchantments for this deck, the total comes to about $21 for the enchantments. Now remember, this is TCG player market price we're going off of, and if you want to make this cheaper for yourself, pick up some light played copies. Now onto instances and sorceries. This deck is actually only going to be running one playset, and that's going to be of Commune with Spirits. This sorcery has a casting cost of a single green, and it lets us look at the top 4 cards of our library. We may reveal an enchantment or land from among them, put them in our hand, and the rest on our bottom of our library in a random order. This card's going to be very, very helpful for us if we need to fix our mana base, or if we need to dig for a certain enchantment. We'll be running a full play set of this, and it'll be costing us about 40 cents. Last but definitely not least, let's talk about the lands in this deck. We'll be running Ash Barrens. This land taps for a colorless mana, and also has the ability of basic land cycling 1. This allows us to pay a single mana, and then we can discard this card and search our deck for a basic land, reveal it, and put it into our hand. Then shuffle our deck. What makes this very good is that not only does it help us guarantee to fix our mana base if we need it, and on top of that, thin our deck out, it makes it easier for us to draw what we need later game. Also, to add to this too, if we haven't played a land this turn, we can basically go, alright, basic land cycling 1, get the land I need, cool, play land, good to go. This deck will be running a full play set of this, and it's going to cost about 80 cents. As for the rest of the lands in this deck, we're going to be running 4 plains and 12 forests. After we tally up this whole deck, the grand total for it is going to be $30.50. Now, that's not that bad of a deck price, but however, I will admit that close to a third of this deck cost literally is just Ancestral Mask. Since this deck can be played in a format and it's not just casual, we're going to go a little bit more into depth with it. Starting off with the mana curve. If you don't know what this is, it basically is where a large clump of our casting cost is and where it curves off and just ends. And this deck has a very, very low mana curve. I'm talking there are 28 cards in this deck that have a casting cost of 1. There are 4 cards in this deck that have a casting cost of 2, and there are 8 cards in this deck that have a casting cost of 3. making this deck be able to go out fast and make threats easy. Now let's look and see what the mana required for this deck is. With 32 cards requiring green mana to cast, 12 cards requiring white mana to cast, and 4 requiring both green and white to cast, we can see why the land base stretches more towards green and leans heavily on that. Speaking of lands, let's talk about the land base. This deck can get away with running a lot lower number of lands than a usual deck because of how low the mana curve is. So what makes this more consistent and what makes us get that white mana when we need that for that deck? Well, it all actually falls back on 2 cards really. Ash Barrens and Communal Spirits. Between Ash Barrens being able to let us basic land cycle and Communal Spirits let us look at the top 4 of our deck, we have many options to help correct the land base if needed. Now let's talk strategy for this deck. This deck does one thing and one thing well, stacking enchantments on hexproof creatures. Short, sweet, and simple. And as we said before, this deck has a very low mana curve, making it really easy to just make a problem on turn 3, and with both Hyena Umbra and Spider Umbra, it gives us an extra layer of protection. Okay, so now we have that figured out, what's this deck's downfalls? Well, the deck works like Voltron, where it needs all the lions to come together to kick butt. But the cost of assembling Voltron could leave you with an empty hand, meaning if our opponent goes for a board wipe and we don't happen to have one of the Umbras on our creature, it means that we have to build back up, and it's going to be hard if we have a low hand. Now this leads to the improvements. I have seen several deck lists online for this deck running 18 lands, and seeing that, it made me feel a little bit leery at first. Now, if you feel confident with the mana base, you could curve out 2 lands, drop 1 Silhana Ledgewalker, and then add 3 Spirited Companion. This enchantment creature doggo will help you draw cards and also still give you a buff for Ancestral Mask and Ethereal Armor. And if you don't like how that feels, just keep playtesting and tinkering until you find out what works for you the best. And with that said, that's going to be the end of the episode. This is our first time making a video on a deck that's not for the casual format, and I hope you all like it. If you do like it though, do be sure to leave a like, be sure to follow. It does help us out a lot, especially since we're kind of still new at doing this right here. Was there anything in this deck that you thought that we could have added for the main deck? If so, do leave a comment down below. I would love to see what you would think this deck could use. But anyways, I'm 16-Bit Ferret, and I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you all next time.